Are you thinking about becoming an FP&A professional? Over the last 15 years, I've led FP&A teams at companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and Squarespace. I've also trained more than 1,000 finance professionals, and I'm the director of the Wharton School's FP&A certificate program. In this video, I'll break down exactly what FP&A is, the requirements of an FP&A professional, typical salaries, and how you can break into this high-demand field. Let's dive in. What is FP&A? Well, the FP&A team's job is to help business leaders make better decisions. We are part of the corporate finance team, and we work alongside the accounting team, or perhaps a treasury or investor relations team if you work at a larger company. And typically, the head of the FP&A team reports directly to the CFO. FP&A stands for financial planning and analysis, but that's only part of what we do. The core mission is turning financial data into actionable insights, and what that means is deciding what metrics matter most, identifying risks and opportunities, and pointing to which actions people can take in order to capitalize on them. And the ultimate goal of FP&A really is helping leaders see the financial implications of their decisions and thereby enabling them to improve the quality of their decisions. Let's talk about the key responsibilities of FP&A professionals, and I'll do this by walking you through the entire FP&A process from A through Z. So the process starts with annual budgeting. That's what companies do typically towards the end of their fiscal year, and the goal is to figure out where they will be in the following year in terms of financial performance, so that's growth in terms of revenue and profits, and also in terms of how much they're going to invest and where in their business. The FP&A professional has to lead the annual budgeting process. What it means is they need to collaborate with the other departments, collecting information from them, perhaps creating Excel templates to collect the information, and then using those templates to consolidate it. And you'll play a critical role because you'll manage the entire annual budgeting process, starting from assigning who does what, through sharing timelines, and then collecting the information, analyzing the information, crucially challenging the inputs you're getting, making sure that your cross-functional business partners really thought everything through, and then turning this information into a projection, into an annual budget, and finally presenting it to the leadership team. You can already tell here that this requires both technical skills and interpersonal skills. We'll talk about this more later in this video. Once the annual budget is done, then it's time to update your forecasts. Most companies do this either on a monthly or on a quarterly basis. FP&A leads the forecasting process, and you need to create projections that are as accurate as possible. That's because leaders make decisions based off of your forecasts. For example, the forecast associated with a big capital investment is used to determine the profitability at each stage and whether the business needs to make budget cuts to maintain profitability through the investment phase, or whether the projection works as originally intended. FP&A teams typically forecast revenues, expenses, and profits, in addition to headcount and cash flow. But you're not only focusing on the financial metrics that you get from your accounting system. Ideally, you're building that forecast by taking into account operational metrics that you find across the business. For example, if your company has free trials to the product, you look at how free trials are changing, so you can use that to forecast subscriptions. Or maybe you look at how many calls your consumer hotline is getting, so you can spot issues like potential quality issues with your product early and forecast resulting impacts on revenues and profitability. All of this serves to give leaders across the company insights and data earlier so they can make better decisions. To improve your forecast accuracy, you'll implement different forecasting techniques in parallel so you can compare the results to each other and eliminate forecast bias as much as possible. Now, I'm referring to techniques like driver-based forecasting, statistical statistical methods, expert judgment. I'll go much more in depth on how these work in my course, The Art and Science of Forecasting. Now, once you're done with your forecast, it's time to do financial analysis. It's time to look back and see how do my actual results compare to expectations. And when we say expectations, what we mean in FP&A is how do actuals compare to your prior forecast, to your budget, and to your prior year actuals. And in doing this variance analysis, your goal is to identify risks and opportunities, to identify real insights that the company can act on. In order to get there, your variance analysis has to be deep. If it's too shallow, then it's not really useful for decision making. So you either have to drill down deep enough in your data, if you have good data at your fingertips, or you need to have in-depth discussions with your business partners. Again, technical skills and interpersonal skills are critical here. Now imagine you uncover an investment opportunity with your variance analysis. Then the next responsibility in the FP&A process is financial modeling. That's where you build a model, typically in Excel or in Google Sheets, to evaluate if the investment makes sense from a financial standpoint. That means you would be building discounted cash flow model, a return on investment model, a lifetime value model. Many different model types depends on your specific business case that you're evaluating. And then this model gives you a go or no-go recommendation. And I always find this super fascinating because, you get all these inputs from your business partners, from your forecast, from your financial records. You throw everything in your Excel spreadsheet, and then it gives you one number that determines whether the company should move ahead with the project or not. Super fascinating. Let's imagine you build your financial model. The result of the financial model is that the net present value is positive, which means that you should go ahead with making the investment. Your job is not done yet, because the best financial model is useless if leaders across the company don't take action. So that means that you have to take that model result and you have to translate it into a message that people without a finance background understand. And you need to position it in a way that you're speaking to the goals of your cross-functional business partners and what they're facing in their day-to-day. And that can be challenging. That requires that you understand the business well and that you can put yourself into the shoes of your business partners and understand their goals and challenges. For example, the head of marketing may have completely different concerns than the head of R&D. And so when you're presenting your model, when you're pitching what you recommend should be done, you have to tailor the message to what they're looking for and take that into account. Now, assuming this is done, the next step in the FP&A process is to report the result. Now, it typically means that you will create a business review, and that's where you summarize the financial story of the business. You don't just throw data on the slide and assume that people get it. You have to find the right visualizations. For example, in some situations, waterfall charts work well. In other situations, line charts or column charts work better. So you're building the deck, you're summarizing the insights, the decisions you want leaders to discuss, and then you will be presenting it. Presenting is a core task of many FP&A roles, and another example how interpersonal skills are so important. But let's double click on the skills you need to succeed in an FP&A role. The skills broadly fall into three categories. There are technical skills, self-management skills, and interpersonal skills. The technical skills you need to succeed in FP&A are financial modeling in Excel. You need to understand Excel inside and out, or Google Sheets. But fortunately, these days, you get a lot of free support there. You can go to your favorite chatbot like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, and when you get stuck in Excel, you can ask it to help you get unstuck. And it's amazing how well these tools understand Excel these days. They can walk you step by step through how to approach something. So while knowing Excel is important in FP&A, if your skills need polish in this area, you'll be better off today than people were even just 5 years ago when generative AI didn't exist yet. Another technical skill that's important is accounting. Now, accounting is the language of business. It explains how the things that people people do translate to financials, but I do want to make it clear that you don't need to have a master's in accounting. You don't need to have your CPA license to succeed in FP&A. It's important to have a foundational knowledge of accounting that will make everything easier, but you don't need to be an accounting expert going into an FP&A role. Other technical skills you need in FP&A include forecasting techniques, analysis techniques, budget management techniques, reporting, visualizing data, but all of these are skills that you can learn by taking an online course like mine or by learning on the job. Then there are self-management skills, which are also critical and which I often asked for when I interviewed people for FP&A roles. So there's attention to detail. That's one of the most important self-management skills because in FP&A we deal with numbers and numbers need to be right. I don't mean this in the sense that your financial projections need to be 100% accurate. Nobody has a magic crystal ball, but you need to have the attention to detail to spot any mistakes you make. There are techniques to do that as well. By the way, I teach that in my financial modeling course, and attention to detail is something that can be trained, but the more you can demonstrate this in interviews by pointing to past experience, the better. Structured thinking is another important self-management skill because in the end what we're doing in FP&A is organizing information and telling the financial story that results from that. And telling a story effectively means doing it in a structured way. Time management skills are also important because most of the time you have the flexibility to organize your agenda. Sometimes you also have to work against tight deadlines. And lastly, bias for action, super important because, FP&A really is the most fun when you can get people to implement something you recommend, and that requires having a bias for action. And lastly, there are the all-important interpersonal skills. So these are your communication skills. You want to know how to influence up and across. Talk about this in detail in my business partnering course. You want to know how to build professional relationships quickly, how to manage tough conversations, and you need to have leadership skills, whether you are managing a large team or whether you are at the beginning of your career, because business partnering and working with and through other departments essentially means leading them, even if you don't have direct hierarchical authority. With the skills out of the way, let's talk about salaries and career path. I differentiate between entry level, mid level, and senior level. At the entry level, your title is typically financial analyst, and you would be making $70,000 to $95,000 depending on location and company. I'm referencing salaries in the US here. Typically, at the entry level, the requirement is 0 to 2 years of experience. At the mid level, your title is typically senior analyst or manager, sometimes senior manager. Your salary can range between $100,000 to $150,000. And the experience you need here is typically 3 to 7 years. And at the senior level, typical job titles are director or VP of FP&A, and your salary can easily be $150,000 to $250,000 plus. And often the next step in someone's career who is at the VP of FP&A level would be that of the Chief Financial Officer. Companies are looking for people with 8 or more years of FP&A experience. Now, what's important to keep in mind here is that many companies inflate their job titles to make the roles seem more appealing. For example, a finance manager at one company may have the same scope and compensation as a senior financial analyst at another company. Therefore, it's important that you take a close look at the role's responsibility to determine seniority. You can do this through the job description, and I recommend you ask detailed questions during your interview to understand how the scope relates to the job title. Now, let's talk about education required for FP&A. People can move into FP&A from various fields, but most commonly I see people coming from investment banking, from accounting, or from audit backgrounds. And in terms of degrees, they typically have finance, accounting, business, or economic degrees. MBAs are often preferred for senior roles, although they are not a requirement. And looking at certifications, CPA and CFA certifications can help. However, they're by no means a requirement to be successful in FP&A. And there are also now dedicated FP&A certifications, which are much more tailored to what you would actually experience in your day-to-day compared to a CPA certification, which is more accounting oriented, or a CFA certification, which is more investment banking oriented. One of the leading FP&A certification is that of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. It's an online program where you earn your certificate over the course of 8 weeks, and its acronym is CFPA. And I'm its program director. Common entry paths into FP&A are from accounting roles, from financial analyst positions in other departments and at other companies, and also directly from undergraduate or graduate programs. For example, I started my career in FP&A at Procter & Gamble, a large consumer goods company, from an internship that I did during my undergraduate program, and then I immediately went to FP&A. I never worked in an accounting role. And then, of course, what will be tremendously helpful in hitting the ground running is in an FP&A role is if you do a specialized FP&A training program, whether that's online or in person, like mine. So that's what FP&A is all about, helping business leaders make better decisions through financial analysis, modeling, forecasting, and compelling storytelling. Now, if you're serious about breaking into this field or simply just improving your skills as an FP&A professional, then make sure you click the first link in the description and join my free newsletter. Over 30,000 finance professionals already receive my weekly insights on budgeting, forecasting, analysis, and business partnering. Plus, when you sign up, you'll get instant access to my top 10 most popular FP&A one-pagers that you can start using immediately. So again, click that first link below to join. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.